Now let's begin. The foundation cracked on a Tuesday in October, but the structure had been weakening for years. Gregory McCarthy just hadn't been looking at the right load-bearing walls. He stood in his kitchen in Portland, watching his 9-year-old son Dylan arrange his collection of vintage baseball cards on the counter, organizing them with the meticulous care Gregory recognized in himself. Melissa moved through the space like a dancer, her dark hair caught in the late afternoon light as she packed a salad for dinner at her parents' house. These Sunday dinners at the Merrill residence had become routine over the 8 years of their marriage, a ritual Gregory had learned to endure with the same stoic patience he applied to difficult clients. "Dad, do you think Grandma Sherry will want to see my cards?" Dylan's eyes lit up with that innocent enthusiasm that made Gregory's chest tighten. "Maybe keep them here, buddy," Gregory said, ruffling his son's hair. "You know how she gets about stuff on her furniture." Melissa shot him a look, sharp but fleeting. They'd had this conversation before, in 1,000 unspoken variations. Her mother, Sherry Merrill, was particular, controlling, intense in ways that set Gregory's teeth on edge, but Melissa was the bridge he walked to keep peace. He'd grown up in a fractured home, his own father absent, his mother working 3 jobs just to keep them afloat. When he met Melissa in college, her stable family seemed like a gift. It took him years to realize that stability could be a cage. The drive to the Merrill house in Lake Oswego took 20 minutes through tree-lined streets, where houses cost triple what Gregory made as an architect. Sherry and her husband Raymond lived in a sprawling craftsman with perfectly manicured hedges and a doormat that always sat at exactly 90 degrees to the door. Raymond Merrill was a retired insurance executive, quiet to the point of invisibility, a man who'd learned to make himself small in his own home. Sherry opened the door before they could knock. She always did. "There's my favorite grandson," she sang, pulling Dylan into an embrace that lasted just a beat too long. She was 58 but maintained herself with the aggressive precision of someone fighting time with both fists. Blonde highlights, crisp clothing, makeup that looked professionally applied. Her eyes found Gregory over Dylan's shoulder, and her smile tightened microscopically. "Gregory, Melissa, right on time." The dinner unfolded with familiar choreography. Sherry dominated conversation, steering every topic back to herself or to Dylan. She'd made his favorite foods, asked him endless questions about school, friends, sports. Her attention was a spotlight that made Gregory instinctively want to shield his son, though he couldn't articulate why. Melissa participated warmly, and Raymond offered occasional quiet agreements, his eyes distant. Gregory had learned to study structures, to read stress points and weaknesses. He'd built a career on understanding how buildings could fail. But people were different. People were harder to read, especially when they smiled. After dinner, while Melissa helped her mother in the kitchen, Gregory found Dylan in the study with Raymond, looking through an old photo album. "Your mom at Dylan's age," Raymond said, pointing to a picture. There was something in his voice, something Gregory couldn't place. Sadness? Regret? She had the same smile, Gregory observed. Raymond closed the album carefully. She was happy then. Before, he stopped himself, glanced toward the kitchen where Sherry's voice carried. "Nothing." Old man rambling. The moment passed. Melissa called them for dessert. It was during coffee that Sherry presented the gift. She produced an ornate wooden box from a cabinet, carved with intricate designs that suggested it was expensive, possibly antique. She held it out to Dylan with a conspiratorial smile. "This is something special, sweetheart. Just for you." She winked. "But open it when you're alone, okay? It's a secret surprise." Dylan's face brightened. "Really? Thanks, Grandma." Gregory felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of gift needs to be opened alone? Sherry's smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. "It's a grandmother-grandson thing, Gregory. Don't be such a helicopter parent." "I'm not." "He's fine," Melissa interjected, her hand on his arm. A warning, gentle but firm. Gregory swallowed his objection. Dylan clutched the box happily, and the moment moved on. But Gregory's mind snagged on it, turning it over like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. They left an hour later. Dylan fell asleep in the back seat, the wooden box on his lap. At home, Gregory helped carry Dylan upstairs. His son stirred as Gregory tucked him in, the box now on his nightstand. "Can I open it now, Dad?" "Grandma said when you're alone." "You're not really alone though. You're my dad." Gregory hesitated. That cold feeling hadn't left. How about we wait until tomorrow? It'll be something to look forward to. Dylan yawned, already drifting. Okay. Gregory descended the stairs to find Melissa reading in the living room, her legs tucked under her. This was their routine, their peace. He poured himself a bourbon and sat across from her. You were tense tonight, she said without looking up. Your mother was intense. With Dylan. She loves him. I know. It's just, he searched for words. The gift thing was weird. Now Melissa looked up. It's a gift, Greg. She probably bought him a baseball card or something collectible and wanted it to be special. Then why the secret? Because she's dramatic. You know this. Melissa's patience was fraying. They'd circled this drain before. She had a hard childhood. Giving gifts is how she shows love. Gregory knew when to retreat. He nodded, sipped his bourbon. But his mind wouldn't let go. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay beside Melissa, listening to her breathe, thinking about Sherry's wink, the careful way she'd handed over the box. About Raymond's unfinished sentence. About the way Sherry's affection for Dylan always felt like possession. At 2 a.m, Gregory gave up on sleep. He padded down the hall to Dylan's room, told himself he was just checking on his son. Dylan slept soundly, one arm flung over his pillow. The wooden box sat on the nightstand, innocent in the darkness. Gregory picked it up. It was heavier than expected, solid. The carvings felt rough under his fingers. He should wait. Respect Sherry's wishes, trust that it was harmless. But Gregory McCarthy had learned young that trust had to be earned, and his mother-in-law had never earned it. He carried the box downstairs to his study, closed the door, and turned on his desk lamp. The box had a simple latch. No lock. Gregory opened it. For a long moment, he couldn't process what he was seeing. His brain rejected it, tried to recontextualize it as something innocent. But there was no innocent explanation. Photographs. Dozens of them. Dylan at various ages, in the bathroom at the Merrill house, changing clothes, sleeping during sleepovers. Some appeared doctored, edited, overlaid with things Gregory's mind recoiled from. And beneath the photos, a journal filled with handwritten entries that made his vision tunnel. Gregory closed the box, set it down, stood up, sat down. His hands shook. Rage and horror and disbelief crashed through him in waves so physical he thought he might vomit. He needed to move, needed air, needed to not be in the same house as this thing. He found himself in the garage, under fluorescent lights, pacing. His mind raced through implications, timelines. Every moment Sherry had been alone with Dylan. Every sleepover, every special time. He heard footsteps. Melissa appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her robe, eyes concerned and sleepy. Greg? It's 3 a.m. What are you? She saw his face. What's wrong? He couldn't speak. Couldn't find words for what he'd seen. He walked past her, retrieved the box from his study, and handed it to her. Don't open it if you don't want to know, he managed. But you need to know. Melissa's confusion shifted to alarm. She opened the box. Her face drained of color. She looked at the photos, flipped through pages of the journal, and then the box fell from her hands, contents scattering across the garage floor. No, she whispered. No, no, no. This isn't. She wouldn't. Get dressed, Gregory said. His voice sounded dead, flat. We're going to the police. Right now. Melissa looked at him, tears streaming down her face. My mother is a predator. The word tasted like poison. And I'm not waiting until morning to report this. They left Dylan with their neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Chun, who asked no questions when she saw their faces. Gregory drove through empty streets, Melissa silent beside him, the box sealed in an evidence bag he'd found in his garage. He'd learned about evidence preservation from a crime podcast. Never thought he'd need the information for this. The police station's fluorescent lights were harsh, sterile. A night desk sergeant listened to their stammered explanation, his expression shifting from bored to alert. Within minutes, they were in an interview room with Detective Terrence Beck, a man in his 40s with tired eyes that had seen too much. Beck opened the box. His jaw tightened. I need you to tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. And Gregory did. He told Beck about Sherry, about the gift, about his suspicions he'd dismissed. Melissa sat beside him, shaking, confirming details. Beck took notes, asked careful questions, and when they finished, he made a phone call. We're going to need to talk to your son, Beck said gently. There are specialists for this. I promise we'll be careful. Gregory nodded. He'd expected this, dreaded it. And Mrs. Merrill? He asked. Beck's expression hardened. We'll be paying her a visit very soon. Dawn was breaking when they left the station. Gregory drove home slowly, his hands finally steady on the wheel. Beside him, Melissa stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I should have known, she whispered. No, Gregory said firmly. This isn't on you. Predators are good at hiding. She's my mother. And Dylan is our son. We protected him. That's what matters. But even as he said it, Gregory knew this was just the beginning. The foundation had cracked, and now he could see all the damage hidden beneath. He had no idea how deep it went. He was about to find out. The coffee in Detective Beck's office tasted like regret and burnt metal. Gregory sat across from him 48 hours after their initial report, watching Beck organize files with the methodical precision of someone building a case brick by brick. Dylan talked to the specialist yesterday, Beck said. He confirmed that your mother-in-law took photographs during sleepovers over the past 3 years. He thought it was normal. That grandmothers did that. Gregory's grip tightened on his coffee cup. Melissa sat beside him, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She'd barely slept since seeing the box's contents, and Gregory had held her through nightmares where she screamed for her son. Did she? Melissa's voice broke. Did she touch him? Beck's expression softened with practiced sympathy. Not physically, according to Dylan. But what she did is still abuse. The photographs, the journal entries, the manipulation. This is serious criminal behavior. Where is she? Gregory asked. He'd been asking this question for 2 days. We executed the warrant yesterday morning. Raymond Merrill was home. Sherry wasn't. According to him, she left Tuesday night after you called Melissa from the police station. Beck paused. He claims he has no idea where she went. You believe him? I believe he's scared. We're monitoring his phone, his accounts. If she contacts him, we'll know. Gregory leaned forward. Tell me about Raymond. Is he involved? Beck consulted his notes. Raymond Merrill, 63, retired insurance executive. No criminal record. Married to Sherry for 32 years. By all accounts, he's passive. Neighbors describe him as quiet, dominated by his wife. We interviewed him extensively. Either he's the best liar I've ever met, or he genuinely didn't know what she was doing. How is that possible? Melissa's voice rose. They share a house. A bedroom. How could he not know? People see what they want to see, Mrs. McCarthy. And predators are excellent at compartmentalization. Beck pulled out another file. We're digging into Sherry's background. Her maiden name was Sherry Caldwell. She was married once before Raymond, from 1985 to 1989. Husband's name was Donald Patterson. I never knew she was married before, Melissa whispered. Did she talk about her past? Never. She always said she didn't like dwelling on old times. Beck exchanged a glance with Gregory that communicated volumes. Donald Patterson died in 1989. House fire. Ruled accidental at the time. He had a daughter from a previous marriage, April Patterson. She was 12 when her father died. Went to live with maternal grandparents afterward. Gregory felt pieces clicking together. You think the fire wasn't accidental? I think it's worth reviewing. Especially since April Patterson legally changed her name to April Levy in 1995 and has moved 7 times in the past 30 years. Beck slid a photograph across the desk. It showed a woman in her late 40s with haunted eyes. We're trying to locate her for questioning. What about Sherry's digital footprint? Gregory asked. He'd spent the past 2 days researching online predator networks, barely able to stomach what he learned. The journal mentioned others. Communication with like-minded individuals. Beck's expression darkened. We have specialists analyzing her devices. She was careful, used encrypted communication, but we're finding traces. This isn't her first time, Mr. McCarthy. And she likely wasn't working alone. Melissa made a choked sound. Gregory took her hand, squeezed it. What do we do now? He asked. You take care of your family. Get Dylan into therapy. Let us do our job. Beck stood, signaling the meeting's end. We will find her. I promise you that. They left the precinct into gray Portland drizzle. Melissa walked to the car like a zombie, got in the passenger seat, and stared at nothing. I keep thinking about every time I left him alone with her, she said. Every sleepover, every afternoon, every moment I thought he was safe. He is safe now. That's what matters. Is it? Melissa turned to him, eyes blazing. She's out there, Greg. She's free, and she knows we reported her, and she's... A sob cut her off. Gregory pulled her close, let her cry into his shoulder. But his mind was already working, analyzing, planning. He'd spent his career understanding structural integrity, identifying weaknesses before catastrophic failure. Sherry Merrill was a structure that needed to collapse, and if the police couldn't make it happen fast enough, Gregory would find another way. That night, after Melissa finally fell into exhausted sleep and Dylan was tucked in bed, Gregory sat in his study with his laptop. He'd been researching Sherry's past, using every database and search engine he could access. The house fire that killed Donald Patterson had been in Spokane, Washington. Local news archives from 1989 described it as a tragedy, a gas leak, a devoted wife devastated by loss. But there were inconsistencies in the coverage. Questions about insurance payouts. A neighbor quoted as saying Sherry seemed eerily calm at the funeral. Gregory dug deeper. Found April Patterson, now April Levy, on social media. Her profile was sparse, private, but her location was listed as Seattle. He sent her a message. Ms. Levy, my name is Gregory McCarthy. I'm married to Sherry Merrill's daughter. I need to talk to you about your stepmother. It's urgent and concerns the safety of a child. Please contact me. He included his phone number and sat back, uncertain if she'd respond. The clock read 1:47 a.m. He should sleep, but sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant processing what he'd seen in that box. His phone buzzed at 2:03 a.m. Unknown number. Is this about Sherry? The text read. Yes. She's hurt my son. Police are looking for her. I need to know everything. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Meet me tomorrow. Pike Place Market, Seattle. 2 p.m. Come alone. Gregory texted back confirmation. Then he sat in the dark, thinking about April Patterson, about what trauma could make someone run for 30 years, about how predators could hide in plain sight behind grandmother smiles and Sunday dinners. He thought about Raymond Merrill's sad eyes and unfinished sentences, about whether complicity through silence was its own crime. Most of all, he thought about the feeling growing in his chest, cold and hard and utterly focused. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was purpose. The next morning, he told Melissa he had a work meeting in Seattle, an urgent client consultation. She barely registered the information, lost in her own grief. He kissed Dylan goodbye, held him perhaps too long, and drove north through persistent rain. Seattle's Pike Place Market was crowded even in October, tourists and locals weaving through stalls of flowers and fish and crafts. Gregory stood near the bronze pig statue, scanning faces until he saw her. April Levy looked like her photo, but older, worn down by years of looking over her shoulder. She wore a rain jacket with the hood up, sunglasses despite the gray sky. She studied him for a long moment before approaching. You have her eyes, she said. Melissa, I saw photos when she got married. Sherry sent me an invitation. A taunt. You know what she is. I've known for 35 years. April's voice was flat, affectless. I was 9 when she married my dad. Perfect stepmother at first. Baked cookies, helped with homework, tucked me in at night. Then came the special attention. The photographs. The games that were our secret. Gregory felt sick. Your father. Never knew. She was too smart for that. And when I finally tried to tell him, when I was 12, she convinced him I was disturbed, jealous of their relationship. He sent me to a therapist she recommended. Someone in her pocket, I realized later. April's hands clenched. 3 months later, our house burned down. Gas leak, they said. My father died in his sleep. The fire started in their bedroom, but somehow Sherry was spending the night at a friend's house. Convenient. You think she killed him? I know she did. But I was 12, traumatized, and had no proof. I went to live with my grandparents. Changed my name at 18. Moved constantly because I was sure she'd find me. April lowered her sunglasses, and Gregory saw eyes that had seen too much. But she didn't need to find me. She just found new victims. The police need to hear this. April laughed bitterly. I've tried. Multiple times over the years. Talked to police in 4 different states. Know what happened? Nothing. No evidence. No witnesses, and Sherry always had alibis. Always had explanations. She's been doing this for decades, and she's good at it. Gregory's phone buzzed. A text from Detective Beck. Call me when you can. He excused himself, walked to a quieter corner, and dialed. We got a hit on Sherry's credit card, Beck said without preamble. Used yesterday at a gas station outside Vancouver, British Columbia. She's running north. Can you extradite her? We're working on it, but it takes time. International law enforcement moves slowly. Beck sighed. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know, but Gregory? Let us handle this. Don't do anything stupid. Gregory ended the call. Returned to April, who was watching him with knowing eyes. They can't catch her, she said. Or they will, and she'll talk her way out of it. She always does. Not this time. You sound certain. Gregory studied this woman who'd spent her life running from a monster. How would you like to help me make sure she never hurts another child? April's smile was razor sharp. I've been waiting 35 years for someone to ask me that. They found a quiet coffee shop. For the next 2 hours, April told Gregory everything, not just about her abuse, but about what she'd learned in her years of amateur investigation. Sherry's patterns, her methods, her connections to online networks. She'd been building a case file for years, obsessively documenting everything she could find. She's part of something bigger, April explained, pulling out a tablet filled with notes. I've tracked at least 6 others in her circle over the years. They share techniques, swap stories, protect each other. Going after Sherry alone isn't enough. The whole network needs to burn. Gregory looked at the information April had compiled. Names, locations, patterns of behavior. It was meticulous, comprehensive, and legally useless without proper evidence. The police won't be able to use most of this, he said. I know. That's why I've never handed it over. But you? April leaned forward. You have something I don't. You have direct evidence. Fresh evidence. A victim who can testify. If we're smart, we can use your case to expose everything else. How? April's smile returned. By giving Sherry exactly what she wants. Over the next hour, they crafted a plan. It was risky, potentially illegal, and definitely dangerous. But Gregory found himself agreeing to every step. Because Detective Beck was right, the legal system moved slowly. Too slowly. And Gregory McCarthy was done being reactive. He drove back to Portland as evening fell, his mind sharp with purpose for the first time in days. Melissa was asleep when he arrived home, Dylan safe in his room. Gregory sat in his study and began to plan in earnest. Architects understood leverage, stress points, controlled demolitions. Sherry Merrill had built her life on a foundation of lies and manipulation. Gregory was going to find every weakness in that structure and bring it crashing down. The police could chase her to Canada. Gregory had other ideas. Raymond Merrill's house felt hollow without Sherry in it. Gregory sat across from his father-in-law in the living room where they'd had countless Sunday dinners, watching the older man dissolve like sugar in rain. I didn't know, Raymond said for the 4th time. His hands shook as he held his coffee mug. You have to believe me, Gregory. I didn't know what she was doing. But you suspected something. It wasn't a question. Raymond's eyes slid away. Sherry was always intense. About things, about people. I learned early in our marriage not to ask too many questions. She had a temper, and when I pushed, when I challenged her. He touched his ribs absently, and Gregory understood. She hurt you. Not often. Just enough to remind me of boundaries. Raymond laughed without humor. I was weak. I am weak. I let her control everything because it was easier than fighting. And now Dylan, his voice broke. Gregory felt a surge of pity for this man who'd chosen comfort over courage. But pity wouldn't protect his son. The police say you don't know where she is. I don't. She left Tuesday night. Took cash I didn't know she had, clothes, her laptop. She had a bag packed like she'd been planning this. Raymond met Gregory's eyes. She knew. Somehow she knew you'd found the box before you even called. That made Gregory pause. How could she know? Sherry always knows things. It's like she can read people, predict them. She's been 3 steps ahead her whole life. Not anymore. Gregory leaned forward. I need you to help me, Raymond. I need you to tell me everything about her. Her habits, her contacts, her patterns. Everything. Why? The police are all ready. The police are following legal channels. I'm not bound by the same restrictions. Raymond studied him. You're planning something. I'm planning to make sure she never gets near my son again. Or anyone else's son. Gregory's voice was steel. Are you going to help me? Or do I need to consider you part of the problem? The threat hung between them. Raymond seemed to age a decade in the silence. What do you need to know? Over the next 2 hours, Gregory extracted every useful detail. Sherry's maiden name, Caldwell, had come from her 3rd foster home. Her real name was Sherry Lynn Becker, born in Tacoma to a mother who died when she was 6. The foster system had shuffled her through 7 homes before she aged out at 18. She'd married Donald Patterson at 21, been widowed at 25, married Raymond at 26. She told me her childhood was difficult, Raymond said. That people had hurt her. I thought I was saving her. His laugh was bitter. Turns out she was the one doing the hurting all along. Gregory learned about Sherry's computer habits, her careful digital security, her friendship with a woman named Joan Contreras who ran an antique shop in Portland and seemed to share Sherry's interests. He learned about camping trips she took alone, about storage units Raymond wasn't allowed to access, about encrypted email accounts and burner phones. She has money hidden, Raymond added. I found bank statements once, years ago, for accounts I didn't know about. When I asked, she said it was inheritance from an aunt. But there was no aunt. I checked. How much money? Hundreds of thousands. Maybe more. Gregory filed this away. Financial resources meant Sherry could run indefinitely, could establish herself anywhere. The Vancouver credit card charge was probably misdirection. She was smarter than that. One more thing, Raymond said as Gregory prepared to leave. Sherry has a safe deposit box. Bank of America on Hawthorne. She visited it monthly, like clockwork. I don't know what's in it, and I'm not on the access list, but it might contain evidence. Gregory's mind raced. Did you tell the police this? I told them about the storage units. I forgot about the safe deposit box until now. Sherry trained me so well not to think about her secrets that I barely remember half of them. Gregory called Detective Beck from his car, relayed the information about the safe deposit box and the storage units. Beck promised to get warrants immediately. You're doing good work, Gregory, Beck said. But I meant what I said. Let us handle the investigation. Don't put yourself in danger. Gregory made appropriate agreeing noises and hung up. Then he called April Levy. Raymond Merrill talked, he said. We have new leads. And I have an idea. I'm listening. Sherry thinks she's hunting. She's been the predator her whole life. What if we make her the prey? April's silence was thoughtful. Go on. She's obsessed with Dylan. That's her weakness. Her need to possess, to control. If we make her think she has an opportunity to get close to him again, she'll take it, April finished. Even knowing it's risky. Exactly. We bait a trap. Using your son as bait is insane. I won't actually risk him. But Sherry doesn't know that. We leak information about Dylan's therapy schedule, about where we take him, create an opening that looks real. And when she shows up, we're ready. April's voice turned sharp with anticipation. I like it. But Gregory, if we do this, we're crossing lines. Legal lines. This isn't just surveillance. This is entrapment, and if it goes wrong, it won't go wrong. I've been thinking about this for 3 days straight. I can see every angle. Architects design buildings. This is a human being, Gregory. A dangerous one. Buildings are predictable, Gregory countered. But so are predators. They have patterns, needs, compulsions they can't control. Sherry's compulsion is Dylan. We use that. They talked for another hour, refining the plan. April would monitor certain online forums where Sherry's network communicated, watching for any chatter. Gregory would establish a routine with Dylan, visible and predictable, that would look like an opportunity to someone watching. And they'd set up surveillance, cameras, tracking, everything they needed to document Sherry's response. I have equipment, April said. I've been preparing for something like this for years. And I know people, former law enforcement who got tired of seeing predators walk free. People who'd help off the books. How soon can we be ready? Give me a week. Gregory hung up and sat in the dark parking lot outside his house, watching lights glow in windows where his family lived. Melissa was inside, probably reading to Dylan before bed. This was what he was protecting. This simple, perfect life that Sherry had tried to poison. He thought about what Detective Beck had said about not doing anything stupid, about crossing lines, about legal boundaries. Then he thought about the photographs in that wooden box, about his son's innocence weaponized, about Sherry's journal describing fantasies that made Gregory's skin crawl. Some lines deserved to be crossed. Inside, Melissa was indeed reading to Dylan, curled together on his bed with a book about space exploration. They both looked up when Gregory entered. Dad, Mom's reading about black holes. Gregory sat on the edge of the bed, ruffled his son's hair. Those are pretty cool, huh? They're scary. They suck everything in and nothing escapes. Well, Gregory said, looking at his son's trusting face. Sometimes scary things teach us that we're stronger than we think, that we can face darkness and come out the other side. Melissa met his eyes over Dylan's head. She knew him well enough to read subtext, to understand he was talking about more than black holes. Her expression questioned, worried. Later, after Dylan slept, they stood in their bedroom. Melissa faced him with arms crossed. What are you planning? I'm planning to keep our son safe. That's not an answer, Greg. You've been different since we went to the police. Focused. Cold. It scares me. Good. You should be scared. Sherry is out there, and the police are moving too slowly. She could disappear forever, or worse, she could come back. So what? You're going vigilante? You're going to track her down yourself. I'm going to make sure she pays for what she did. Not just to Dylan, but to everyone she's hurt. Gregory sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. I found her stepdaughter, Melissa. April Patterson. Sherry abused her for 3 years, then probably killed her father. April's been running her whole life, building evidence that's never been enough to nail Sherry. But now we have fresh evidence. A chance to end this. Melissa sank down beside him. How? He told her. About April, about the network, about the plan to draw Sherry out. Melissa listened without interrupting, her face cycling through emotions Gregory couldn't quite read. This is dangerous, she finally said. I know. And possibly illegal. Probably illegal. And you're doing it anyway. I'm doing it because it's right. Because the legal system is designed for normal criminals, and Sherry isn't normal. She's been evading justice for decades. She'll keep doing it unless someone stops her. Melissa was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need from me? Gregory looked at his wife, this woman who'd been raised by a monster and never knew it, who was holding herself together through sheer force of will. I need you to trust me, and I need you to keep Dylan safe while I work. I can do that. Melissa took his hand. But Gregory, promise me you'll come back. Whatever you're planning, however far you go, promise me you won't lose yourself in this. He wanted to make that promise. But he thought about the photographs, the journal, the years of abuse hidden behind Sunday dinners and grandmotherly smiles. I'll do my best, he said. It wasn't the promise she wanted, but it was the truth. The next morning, Detective Beck called with news. They'd accessed Sherry's storage units and safe deposit box. The storage units contained old files, nothing immediately useful. But the safe deposit box had been cleaned out recently, probably the same night Sherry fled. She was systematic about covering her tracks, Beck said. We did find some forensic evidence at her house, digital traces we're analyzing. And we've confirmed the Vancouver charge was a decoy. Her phone pinged a tower in Portland the same day. She's still in the area, Gregory. She's watching, Gregory said. That's what concerns me. If she's staying local, she has a reason. Maybe she's not ready to run. Maybe she thinks she can still. Still what? Beck's pause was heavy. Still get to Dylan. Finish what she started. These predators, they don't think like normal people. In her mind, Dylan belongs to her. Leaving means accepting defeat, and Sherry doesn't strike me as someone who accepts defeat. After they hung up, Gregory stood at his study window, looking out at the quiet street. Was Sherry out there somewhere, watching his house? Planning her next move? Good. Let her watch. Let her think she was hunting. She'd learn soon enough who the real hunter was. That afternoon, Gregory established the pattern. He took Dylan to a child therapist in Selwood, a deliberate choice because the building was exposed, easy to surveil. They made it a routine, every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Gregory parked in the same spot, walked the same route, sat in the same waiting room. Visible. Predictable. Bait. April's people installed cameras in the parking lot, the sidewalks, every angle. They monitored online forums for any chatter. And they waited. 1 week passed. Then 2. Dylan's therapy sessions became routine. Melissa went back to work. Life resumed a strange semblance of normalcy, like a play where everyone knew their lines, but the script kept changing. Gregory spent his days designing buildings and his nights designing traps. He studied predator behavior, surveillance techniques, interrogation tactics. April sent him files from her decades of research, and he absorbed every detail. On the 15th day, a Tuesday, April called as Gregory drove Dylan to therapy. We got activity, she said. Encrypted forum, one of Sherry's old handles. She's asking questions about child therapy facilities in Portland, specifically about security. She's planning to make a move. Looks like it. Gregory, are you ready for this? He looked at Dylan in the rearview mirror, playing on his tablet, innocent and safe. I've been ready since the moment I opened that box. Then let's finish this. The trap closed on a Thursday evening. Gregory had spent 3 weeks establishing patterns so predictable that even the most cautious predator would feel confident exploiting them. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m., Dylan's therapy session in Selwood. Every time, Gregory parked in the same spot, walked the same route, sat in the same waiting room chair. But today, 3 blocks away, April Levy sat in a surveillance van with 2 men Gregory had met only once, former FBI agents who'd grown tired of seeing predators game the system. The van's interior glowed with monitor screens showing multiple camera angles of the therapy office and surrounding streets. Movement on camera 3, one of the men said. His name was Kirk, weathered and compact. Silver Toyota, partial plate matches one registered to Joan Contreras. Gregory's pulse quickened. Sherry's antique dealer friend. They'd been monitoring her for 10 days, waiting. Is it Sherry? April zoomed in. The driver wore a wig, sunglasses, but the facial structure was right. That's her. The Toyota circled the block twice, slow and searching. Sherry was assessing, looking for security, for traps. Gregory had planned for this. The surveillance equipment was hidden, the cameras disguised as building fixtures. To Sherry's eyes, everything would look normal. She's parking, Kirk said. 2 blocks east. On screen, they watched Sherry exit the vehicle. She'd disguised herself well, brown wig, heavy makeup, different body language. But Gregory recognized her walk, that purposeful stride that said she owned whatever space she occupied. Sherry approached the therapy building obliquely, using storefronts as cover, pausing to check reflections. Professional counter-surveillance techniques. Where did she learn that? Gregory muttered. Probably from the same online networks where she learned everything else, April said. Her voice was tight with decades of accumulated rage. These people share more than just fantasies. They share operational security. Sherry reached the building's entrance, studied the directory. Dylan's therapist was on the 3rd floor. Session wouldn't end for another 20 minutes. She's waiting, Kirk observed. Patient. They watched Sherry position herself near the elevator bank, pretending to read her phone. But her eyes tracked every person who entered or exited. A predator's awareness. Gregory's phone buzzed. Detective Beck. Where are you? Beck asked without preamble. At my son's therapy appointment. What? We got a hit on facial recognition. Sherry Merrill was spotted near a library in Selwood 40 minutes ago. I'm sending officers to your location. Lock down Gregory. She's coming for Dylan. I'm aware, Gregory said. I see her. A pause. You see her? Gregory, what the hell are you? Doing my job since the law couldn't do yours fast enough. Gregory ended the call. In the van, April looked at him sharply. You just burned your deniability. I don't care about deniability. I care about stopping her. On screen, Dylan and his therapist emerged from the elevator. Dr. Lawrence Goldstein, 63, had been briefed on the situation and agreed to help. He kept Dylan talking animatedly, giving Gregory time to position. Sherry's body language changed the instant she saw Dylan. Her entire focus narrowed like a predator spotting prey. She took a step forward, then checked herself. Too many witnesses. Too exposed. But her eyes followed Dylan with unmistakable hunger. Gregory had positioned himself around the corner from the elevator bank, invisible to Sherry, but watching through a camera feed on his phone. He waited until Dylan and Dr. Goldstein exited the building, until Sherry followed at a careful distance. Then he moved. She's heading for the parking lot, April said through Gregory's earpiece. West exit. Gregory circled the building, timing his approach. Sherry was tracking Dylan toward Gregory's parked car, probably planning to watch which direction they drove, follow at a distance. Stalking behavior. Now, April said. Gregory stepped out from behind a van, directly into Sherry's path. She stopped short, recognition flashing before she could mask it. Hello, Sherry. For a moment, she considered running. Gregory could see the calculation in her eyes, but they were on a public street, and running would draw attention. Instead, she shifted her weight, and her expression transformed into something maternal, concerned. Gregory, what a coincidence. I was just stalking my son? I know. He kept his voice level, conversational. Passers-by heard nothing concerning. The cameras caught everything. Your approach, your surveillance patterns, your intent. Sherry's mask slipped. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And so will the police when they arrive. Gregory checked his watch. Detective Beck is 3 minutes out. But I wanted to talk to you first. About what? About April Patterson. About Donald Patterson. About how many children you've hurt over the years. Something dangerous flashed in Sherry's eyes. April was disturbed. A liar. And you're making wild accusations about. I have your box, Sherry. Your photographs, your journal. I have April's testimony. I have evidence from your safe deposit box that you thought you'd destroyed. This last was a bluff, but Gregory delivered it with complete confidence. It's over. Sherry laughed, high and brittle. You think you've won? You think the police can make anything stick? I have lawyers, Gregory. Good lawyers. Money. Connections. This will all disappear like it always does. Maybe. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? Gregory stepped closer, lowered his voice, so only she could hear. Because I wanted you to know that I see you. Not the grandmother mask, not the victim act. I see the predator. And even if you slither away from the police, even if you somehow beat these charges, I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone you meet knows exactly what you are. Sherry's face contorted with rage. You self-righteous piece of... Mom. They both turned. Melissa stood 20 feet away, having dropped Dylan with Dr. Goldstein. Her face was pale, her eyes enormous. Mom, please tell me Gregory's wrong. Tell me this is a misunderstanding. Sherry's expression transformed instantly back to maternal. Melissa, honey, your husband has been under tremendous stress. He's imagining things, making accusations that... Stop. Melissa's voice cracked. I saw the box. I read your journal. I know what you are. Melissa, I raised you. I loved you. You can't possibly believe. Did you touch me? Melissa's question came out strangled. When I was Dylan's age, did you? Of course not. You're my daughter. But Dylan is your grandson, and that didn't stop you. Sherry's mask finally shattered completely. Her face twisted into something ugly, vindictive. Dylan is special. He's perfect. You wouldn't understand because you've never appreciated perfection, never understood. Police sirens cut her off. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, followed by Detective Beck's unmarked sedan. Officers emerged quickly, hands on weapons. Sherry looked at Gregory with pure hatred. This isn't over. Yes, Gregory said. It is. Beck approached with handcuffs, reading Sherry her rights. She went quiet, retreating into herself. As officers led her away, she looked back once at Gregory. You have no idea what you've started, she said. Then I guess I'll find out. Later, at the police station, Gregory sat with Beck in an interview room. The detective looked tired and angry. What you did was reckless, potentially illegal, and undermined our investigation. Your investigation was moving too slowly. That's not your call to make. It was when my son's safety was at stake. Gregory met Beck's glare evenly. You had her in Vancouver, supposedly. She was here the whole time, watching, planning. How long before she made a move that didn't have cameras rolling? Beck's jaw worked. The footage you captured can't be used officially. You didn't have warrants, didn't have authority. A lawyer will tear it apart. Then don't use it officially. But you have her on attempted contact with a victim despite a restraining order. You have her on stalking. You have April Patterson's testimony about Donald Patterson's death. You have the contents of that box. Build your case with what's legal and use what I gave you to know where to look. It doesn't work like that. It should. Gregory leaned back. You know what she is, detective. You know she's done this before and will do it again if she gets the chance. Are you really going to let procedure protect her? Beck was quiet for a long moment. April Patterson contacted me this morning. She's willing to testify about her father's death, about her abuse. We're reopening the Donald Patterson case. And we found something in Sherry's digital forensics, communications with Joan Contreras that reference other victims. This is bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Big enough that the FBI is interested. Big enough that if we do this right, we might take down an entire network. Gregory felt something unclench in his chest. Then let me help. No, you've done enough. More than enough. Let us handle it from here. But Gregory had no intention of stepping back. He'd crossed too many lines already to stop now. Over the next week, while Sherry sat in jail unable to make bail, Gregory worked with April to compile everything they knew. Names, patterns, digital traces. April's 35 years of investigation combined with Gregory's fresh evidence created a picture of a sophisticated network that spanned multiple states. Joan Contreras was arrested on charges related to distribution of illegal materials. Under interrogation, she gave up 3 more names. Each arrest led to more evidence, more connections. The network was unraveling. But it wasn't enough. Gregory could feel it. Sherry might go to prison, might even face serious time, but the case against her was still partially circumstantial. A good lawyer could create reasonable doubt, could paint her as a disturbed woman who needed help rather than punishment. Gregory wanted more than prison. He wanted complete destruction. The idea came to him on a rainy Sunday morning. He was sitting in his study, reviewing April's files, when he noticed a pattern in Sherry's journal entries. References to a cabin, to our special place, to summer visits that Raymond had never been part of. He called Raymond. The cabin Sherry mentioned in her journal. Where is it? Raymond's voice was hollow. I didn't know she had a cabin. She referenced it multiple times. Somewhere she took people. Somewhere private. Jesus. Raymond was quiet. Wait. She inherited property from Donald Patterson. I remember because there were tax documents. But she said she sold it years ago. Where was it? Outside Sisters, Oregon. High desert. But Gregory, if she lied about selling it, then it might still exist, and might contain evidence. Gregory called April. Within 2 hours, they'd found property records. The cabin still existed, registered under a shell company that traced back to Sherry through 3 layers of paperwork. We need to tell Detective Beck, April said. We will, after we check it out. Gregory. She had 35 years to hurt people. April. How many more victims might there be? How much evidence might she have stored there? If we go through official channels, get warrants, she'll have time to make calls, warn people, destroy evidence. But if we move now, we're talking about breaking and entering. We're talking about justice. April was silent for a long moment. When do we leave? They drove to Sisters the next morning, 3 hours through increasingly desolate landscape. The cabin sat on 40 acres of pine forest and scrubland, accessible only by a rutted dirt road. It looked abandoned, but the lock on the door was new. Gregory picked it. He'd learned how from YouTube videos during the long nights when sleep was impossible. Inside, the cabin was clean, maintained. Not abandoned at all. They found the room in the basement. Soundproofed walls, camera equipment, computers, and filing cabinets full of photographs, videos, journals going back decades. Gregory's stomach turned. April made a sound like a wounded animal. How many? She whispered. Dozens. Maybe more. Gregory photographed everything with his phone, documenting positions before they touched anything. We need to catalog this, preserve chain of custody. They spent 6 hours in that basement, careful not to disturb evidence, but capturing everything digitally. The material was damning, comprehensive, impossible to explain away. It showed Sherry's activities spanning back to before she married Donald Patterson. She's been doing this since she was 20, April said, voice shaking. These photos are dated 1983. She was a predator before I was even born. Among the files, they found something else. Records of communications with other network members. Names, addresses, patterns. Sherry had been meticulous about documenting her world. She kept insurance, Gregory realized. Evidence on everyone she knew, so if she went down, she could take them with her. Mutually assured destruction. Then let's destroy them all. They photographed everything, then called Detective Beck. Gregory told him about the cabin, about what they'd found, carefully editing out the breaking and entering part. Anonymous tip led us to research property records, Gregory said. We were checking if it existed when we saw signs of activity. Door was open. We found evidence in plain sight. Beck's silence suggested he didn't believe a word but was willing to play along. Stay there. Don't touch anything else. I'm getting warrants and coming with a team. By the time Beck arrived with FBI agents and forensic specialists, Gregory and April were sitting outside, the picture of concerned citizens. The agents spent 12 hours cataloging evidence. When they emerged, Beck looked grim. This is the worst I've seen in 23 years, he said. We're talking federal charges, multiple defendants, decades of abuse. The DA's building a RICO case. Will it stick? Gregory asked. With what's in there? She'll die in prison. They all will. That night, Gregory drove home through darkness, April asleep in the passenger seat. She'd stayed awake for 48 hours running on rage and purpose. Now, with the evidence secure, she'd finally crashed. Gregory thought about what they'd found, about the scope of Sherry's crimes. He'd started this journey wanting to protect his son. He was ending it having helped expose a network that had operated for decades. But he wasn't done. The cabin evidence would convict Sherry. But Gregory wanted her to understand, to know exactly how completely she'd lost. He wanted her to face what she'd done to April, to Dylan, to all of them. Not in a courtroom where she could hide behind lawyers, but stripped of all masks. He wanted confession. Real confession. And Gregory McCarthy was very good at getting what he wanted. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after Sherry's arrest. She'd been denied bail, classified as a flight risk, and was being held in Multnomah County Detention Center. Her lawyer, a slick Portland defense attorney named Myron Harvey, was already spinning narratives about mental illness, about Sherry being a victim herself, about prosecutorial overreach. Gregory watched the news coverage with cold focus. Harvey was good, polished, the kind of lawyer who could make juries doubt clear evidence. The cabin files were damning, but digital evidence could be challenged, chain of custody questioned. Sherry's journal could be called fiction, a disturbed woman's fantasies rather than documentation of actual crimes. He's going to argue she never actually touched Dylan, Melissa said. She sat beside Gregory on their couch, laptop open to legal analysis of the case. That the photographs were invasive but not technically assault. That the journal was just writing, not action. He might succeed. Gregory kept his voice neutral. Dylan might have to testify. He's 9 years old, Greg. A defense attorney will cross-examine him. I won't let that happen. You can't stop it. The prosecution needs Dylan's testimony to establish ongoing pattern of behavior, to show Sherry's actions weren't isolated but systematic. Melissa closed her laptop. I can't watch my baby be traumatized again. Gregory pulled her close. Trust me, I have a plan. What kind of plan? The kind that doesn't involve Dylan on a witness stand. Melissa pulled back, searching his face. What are you going to do? Get a confession. A real one, on camera, comprehensive and voluntary. Something even Myron Harvey can't spin. How? By giving Sherry exactly what every narcissist wants, a chance to explain themselves. The next day, Gregory visited the detention center. He'd submitted a visitor request, claiming to be Sherry's son-in-law seeking family reconciliation. The request was approved. Sherry looked smaller in orange scrubs, her carefully maintained appearance stripped down to harsh reality. But her eyes were still sharp, calculating. She picked up the visitor phone. Come to gloat. Come to talk. About what? About making sure Dylan doesn't have to testify. About giving you a chance to control your own narrative. Gregory leaned forward. Your lawyer's planning to drag this out. Challenge everything. Make Dylan relive his trauma on the stand. Is that really what you want? What I want is to get out of here. That's not happening. The evidence from the cabin alone would convict you. But you could minimize the damage. Plead guilty to lesser charges. Avoid trial. Spare Dylan the witness stand. Sherry laughed. And spend the rest of my life in prison? No thank you. You're going to prison regardless. But you could choose how you go. Confess everything. Show remorse. Maybe get a deal that puts you somewhere with treatment rather than maximum security. Or fight it, traumatize Dylan, and end up in Gen Pop, where people know exactly what you did to children. The threat landed. Sherry's face tightened. Even if I wanted to confess, which I don't, my lawyer would never allow it. I'm not asking you to confess to your lawyer. I'm asking you to confess to me. Gregory pulled out a small digital recorder, set it on the counter. Tell me everything. The full story, your perspective, why you did what you did. I'll make sure the prosecutor sees it. Make sure it's part of the record. You get to explain yourself. Why would you do that? Because I want the truth. All of it. And because I'm betting your ego can't resist the opportunity to defend yourself. Sherry studied him for a long moment. You think you've won. You think you've beaten me. I think you're in jail and my son is safe. That's all the winning I need. Your son. Sherry's expression twisted. You don't even understand what you've taken from me. Dylan was perfect, and you poisoned him against me. You turned him into evidence. You destroyed something beautiful. Gregory's hand tightened on the phone. There was nothing beautiful about what you did. Because you can't see it. None of you can. Society puts these artificial restrictions on love, on connection, on child abuse. Call it what it is. Sherry's eyes flashed. I never hurt Dylan. I never hurt any of them. I gave them special attention, made them feel valued. April was loved. Donald's daughter. What was her name? The question caught Sherry off guard. What? Donald Patterson's daughter. The one you abused for 3 years. What was her name? April. Say her full name. Look me in the eye and say it. April Patterson. Sherry's voice was defiant. And I didn't abuse her. I cared for her. She was special, like Dylan. But people interfered, made her think what we had was wrong. She turned against me. So you killed her father. Donald died in a fire. Accidents happen, not accidents. You said it. You murdered your husband to keep him from finding out what you'd done to his daughter. Prove it. I don't have to. The FBI is exhuming his body, looking for accelerant traces that modern forensics can detect. They're interviewing witnesses from 1989 who were never properly questioned. They're building a murder case. Gregory leaned closer. But you could get ahead of it. Confess now, explain your circumstances, show remorse. Or wait for them to prove it and face death penalty. He was bluffing about the death penalty, but Sherry didn't know that. She set down the phone. For a moment, Gregory thought she'd end the conversation. Then she picked it back up. If I talk, you guarantee Dylan doesn't testify? I guarantee I'll do everything in my power to make that happen. And you'll make sure the prosecutor knows I cooperated? Yes. Sherry considered. Gregory could see her weighing options, calculating angles. Finally, she nodded. Fine. I'll talk. But not here. I want a proper interview, recorded, official. I want it on record that I'm cooperating voluntarily. I'll arrange it. Gregory left the detention center with his recorder and used, but his trap set. He called Detective Beck. Sherry wants to confess. Full confession, on camera, the whole history. But she has conditions. What conditions? She wants protection from general population. She wants consideration for cooperation. And she wants it recorded as voluntary. Beck was silent. This is manipulation. She's trying to control the narrative. Let her. We get a confession that saves Dylan from testifying and locks her away forever. That's worth giving her the illusion of control. The DA will never. The DA wants to win without traumatizing a 9-year-old on the stand. Make it happen, Beck. 3 days later, Sherry sat in an interview room with her lawyer, a prosecutor, Detective Beck, and a camera rolling. Gregory watched through one-way glass as Sherry, coached by her attorney to show remorse, proceeded to do the opposite. She talked for 3 hours. About her childhood in foster care, about people who didn't understand her, about society's restrictive views on love and connection. She described her relationship with April Patterson, with Dylan, with others over the years. She rationalized, justified, explained, and she incriminated herself comprehensively. Myron Harvey tried several times to stop her, but Sherry overrode him. She was finally being heard, finally explaining herself, and she couldn't resist. She didn't confess to murdering Donald Patterson, but she admitted to being relieved by his death, to finding it convenient that the fire happened when it did. She talked about the cabin, about documenting special moments with children. She described her network as a support group of like-minded individuals. By the time she finished, even Harvey looked ill. My client was clearly in a disturbed state of mind, he said weakly. This confession is admissible. The prosecutor cut in. She was read her rights, had legal counsel present, and spoke voluntarily. Thank you, Ms. Merrill, for your cooperation. Sherry seemed to realize, finally, what she'd done. Her face drained of color. I want to recant. I didn't mean. Too late, Beck said. Gregory left the observation room and walked outside into bright spring sunlight. April was waiting in the parking lot. How'd it go, she asked. She confessed to everything. Her lawyer looked ready to quit. April's laugh was shaky. 35 years I've been waiting to hear her admit what she did. And she just gave it up. Narcissists can't help themselves. Give them an audience, and they'll tell you exactly who they are. They stood in silence for a moment, watching traffic pass on the street. What happens now? April asked. Now the FBI uses her confession to roll up the rest of her network. Now prosecutors have enough to put her away for life without putting Dylan on the stand. Now we rebuild. Is it really over? Gregory thought about Sherry in that interview room, finally exposed, all masks stripped away. He thought about the evidence from the cabin, about the network collapsing, about his son's safe. For her? Yes. For us? It's just beginning. The sentencing hearing took place 4 months after Sherry's confession. The prosecution, armed with her recorded admission and the cabin evidence, had built a federal RICO case that encompassed 37 years of systematic predation. Sherry's lawyer attempted a diminished capacity defense, arguing mental illness, but the confession destroyed any credibility. Gregory sat in the courtroom with Melissa and April. Dylan was not present. The judge had ruled his testimony unnecessary given Sherry's detailed admission. The prosecution presented a timeline of victims. April Patterson testified about her abuse and her father's death. 2 other adults came forward, people Sherry had victimized in the 1990s who'd never reported out of shame and fear. The FBI presented evidence of the network, showing how Sherry had been a central node in a conspiracy spanning multiple states. Then the prosecutor played excerpts from Sherry's confession. In her own words, Sherry described her crimes, rationalized them, explained her philosophy of special relationships with children. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Myron Harvey made a brief, half-hearted plea for leniency based on Sherry's age and clean record prior to 2024. The judge listened impassively. When it came time for victim impact statements, April stood first. Her voice shook but never broke. Sherry Merrill stole my childhood. She abused me, killed my father, and forced me to live in fear for 35 years. I changed my name, moved constantly, built a life around running from her. She destroyed families, traumatized children, and showed no remorse until the moment she was caught. Even then, her confession was just another manipulation. I asked that this court show her the same mercy she showed her victims. None. Melissa spoke next, reading a statement on behalf of Dylan. My son is 9 years old. He should be worried about baseball practice and math homework, not therapy to process his grandmother's abuse. Sherry Merrill violated our trust, targeted our child, and showed us that evil can hide behind family dinners and birthday presents. Dylan is healing, but he will carry these scars forever. I asked the court to ensure Sherry Merrill never has the opportunity to hurt another child. Finally, Gregory stood. He debated whether to speak, but decided the moment required it. Your Honor, I'm an architect. I design structures, ensure they're safe, anticipate points of failure. When I discovered what Sherry Merrill had done to my son, I realized I'd missed the most obvious warning signs. Her need for control, her possessiveness, her boundary violations. I dismissed them as personality quirks. But predators rely on our instinct to be polite, to keep peace, to not make waves. They exploit our desire to think the best of people. Sherry Merrill is a predator who operated successfully for nearly 4 decades because she understood how to manipulate social norms. The cabin evidence shows at least 23 separate victims we've identified. There are likely more. This case isn't about one grandmother making a terrible mistake. It's about a systematic, sophisticated operation designed to exploit and harm children. I ask that sentencing reflect not just the crimes we know about, but the decades of victims we'll never find. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Leona Vance, reviewed documents before speaking. Ms. Merrill, I've read your confession, reviewed the evidence, and listened to testimony. In my 28 years on the bench, I have never encountered such a comprehensive pattern of predation. Your crimes span decades and victims. Your lack of remorse, even in confession, suggests no capacity for rehabilitation. The law requires I consider factors like age, criminal history, and likelihood of reoffense. But the psychological evaluation submitted by the prosecution indicates you present an ongoing danger to children and show markers consistent with psychopathy. Sherry stood with her lawyer. She'd aged visibly over 4 months in detention. Her carefully maintained appearance collapsed into something gray and diminished. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? Judge Vance asked. Sherry looked at Gregory, at Melissa, at April. For a moment, her mask slipped back into place, and she smiled. I regret getting caught, she said. The courtroom erupted. Harvey tried to quiet his client, but Sherry continued. I regret that small-minded people with limited understanding destroyed something beautiful. I regret that children like Dylan will grow up in a world that teaches them to fear love instead of embracing it. I regret. That's enough, Judge Vance said coldly. Ms. Merrill, I sentence you to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Given your age, this is effectively a life sentence. You will also be required to register as a sex offender and will be prohibited from any contact with minors for the remainder of your life. You will serve your sentence at FCI Dublin, where I'm told they have appropriate programs for individuals with your particular criminal profile. FCI Dublin. Gregory had researched it. A facility where Sherry's crimes would be known, where child predators faced special attention from other inmates. Sherry's composure cracked. You can't. I can and I have. Officers, remove the defendant. As marshals led Sherry away, she looked back one final time at Gregory. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, Gregory said quietly. It is. Outside the courthouse, Gregory, Melissa, and April stood in afternoon sunlight. Media swarmed, but Detective Beck's people kept them at distance. How do you feel? April asked. Relieved, Melissa said. Exhausted. Grateful. She squeezed Gregory's hand. Thank you. For everything. I didn't do it alone. April smiled, tired but genuine. No, you didn't. And I'm grateful for that. For the first time in 35 years, I can stop looking over my shoulder. What will you do now? Gregory asked. Live. Just live. Maybe get a dog. Take a vacation. Normal things. April's eyes were wet. Things I couldn't do when I was running. They said their goodbyes. April promised to stay in touch, to visit, to be part of the strange family they'd forged through shared trauma. Gregory drove home with Melissa, neither speaking much. There was too much to process, too many emotions. At home, Dylan was playing in the backyard with Mrs. Chin's grandson, their laughter carrying through open windows. Gregory stood watching them, Melissa beside him. Will he be okay? She asked. With time and therapy and love? Yes. He's resilient. Gregory pulled her close. We all are. That night, after Dylan was asleep, Gregory sat in his study with a bourbon. He pulled out a folder he'd kept hidden, filled with notes from his investigation, timelines he'd built, connections he'd mapped. The case was closed. Sherry would die in prison. The network was dismantled. But Gregory knew evil wasn't singular. For every Sherry they caught, others operated in shadows. The cabin evidence had led to 37 arrests across 6 states. Those arrests would lead to more evidence, more cases, a domino effect that would continue for years. Gregory had done his part. He'd protected his son, exposed a predator, helped bring down a network. Now it was time to step back, let professionals handle the aftermath. He fed the folder into his shredder, watched years of obsessive investigation turn to confetti. Tomorrow he'd return to designing buildings. To Sunday dinners that didn't include Sherry. To therapy sessions that would slowly, carefully help Dylan process what happened. To being a father and husband instead of a hunter. The foundation had cracked, but they'd repaired it. Built it stronger. 6 months after sentencing, life had found a rhythm that almost felt normal. Dylan's nightmares were less frequent. His therapy sessions more about building coping skills than processing trauma. Melissa had returned to teaching, throwing herself into work with renewed purpose. And Gregory had completed his most significant architectural project, a community center designed specifically for child advocacy services. The McCarthy family had become reluctant advocates. Melissa spoke at conferences about recognizing abuse in family systems. April had published a memoir about her 35-year ordeal, titled The Grandmother's Mask. And Gregory consulted with law enforcement on predator psychology, lending his analytical mind to pattern recognition. But today was Sunday, and Sundays were family time. New tradition. Gregory stood at their backyard grill, flipping burgers while Dylan played soccer with friends from school. Melissa gardened nearby, her hands in soil, finding peace in growth. April drove up, her dog, a rescue named Phoenix, in the passenger seat. She'd gained weight, looked healthier. No longer running had freed her to live. Uncle Greg. Dylan called. They'd adopted the title for April, even though she was more like an aunt by trauma bond than blood. Phoenix is here. The dog bounded into the yard, and Dylan chased after him, laughing. Gregory watched this simple joy, this normal childhood moment, and felt the last tight coil in his chest release. How's the book tour? He asked April as she joined him at the grill. Exhausting. Cathartic. People keep thanking me for being brave, but I was just tired of running. She accepted a beer. Speaking of which, I got a letter from Sherry. Gregory's hand tightened on his spatula. What did it say? The usual narcissist nonsense. How I betrayed her, how I'm profiting from lies, how she's the real victim. April took a long drink. I burned it without finishing. Good. Her lawyer's filing appeals, apparently. Trying to get the confession suppressed. Won't work. It was clean. I know. But she'll keep trying until she dies. That's what predators do. They never accept responsibility. April watched Dylan playing with her dog. But she can't hurt anyone from prison. That's what matters. Melissa joined them, wiping dirt from her hands. Is this a party or a vigilante reunion? Can it be both? April grinned. They ate together, talked about normal things, work, renovations, Dylan's upcoming baseball tournament. The conversation didn't touch on Sherry, on trauma, on the darkness they'd all faced. They'd learned that healing meant choosing what to discuss, when to remember, and when to let go. After dinner, while adults cleaned up, Dylan approached Gregory at the kitchen sink. Dad, I have a question. Shoot. Mrs. Rodriguez says we're supposed to make family trees for school. Who should I put for Grandma? Gregory dried his hands, knelt to Dylan's eye level. They'd had versions of this conversation before, but each iteration felt important. You can put Grandma Sherry if you want. She's technically your grandmother, even if she's not in our lives anymore. Or you can leave that spot blank. Or you could put Aunt April, since she's chosen family. Gregory touched his son's shoulder. It's your family tree, buddy. You get to decide who belongs. Dylan considered this seriously. I think I'll put Aunt April. She's better at being grandma-like. Works for me. That night, after guests left and Dylan slept, Gregory stood in his study looking at building plans for a new project, a children's hospital. He'd become particular about his clients, choosing projects that felt meaningful. Architecture was about protecting people, creating safe spaces. He understood that more deeply now. Melissa appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by hall light. Come to bed, she said softly. In a minute. She crossed to him, wrapped arms around his waist. Do you regret it? Any of it? Regret what? Crossing lines. Breaking laws. Becoming whoever you had to become to stop her. Gregory thought about that wooden box, about photographs that would haunt him forever, about the moment he'd decided legal limitations didn't apply to protecting his son, about the trap he'd set, the confession he'd engineered, the gray areas he'd operated in. No, he said finally. I'd do it all again. Even knowing it changed you, especially knowing that. Because the alternative was doing nothing, and I couldn't live with that. He turned to face her. Could you? Melissa smiled sadly. No, I couldn't. I'm just glad we didn't lose ourselves completely. We didn't lose ourselves. We found out who we really are when everything's at stake. They stood together in the quiet of their home, rebuilt from foundation up. Outside, Portland rain began to fall, washing streets clean. Somewhere, Sherry Merrill sat in a cell, probably plotting appeals, clinging to delusions that she'd somehow reclaim control. But her world had collapsed completely. The network she'd built was dismantled. Her victims had survived and spoken. Her crimes were documented permanently. She would die in prison, remembered only as a cautionary tale. And Gregory McCarthy would live, raising his son, loving his wife, building structures that protected people. He'd learned that foundations matter, that you check for weaknesses before catastrophic failure, that sometimes the strongest structures require tearing down what's corrupt and starting over. He'd learned that protecting what you love means being willing to fight, to cross lines, to become someone capable of facing darkness. Most importantly, he'd learned that winning doesn't mean emerging unchanged. It means emerging with what matters most still intact. His family was intact, bruised, healing, but intact. That was victory enough. Gregory turned off his study light and followed Melissa to bed. Tomorrow he'd design buildings. Tonight, he'd sleep without nightmares for the first time in months. The foundation was solid now. Whatever came next, they were ready. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.